Good morning, Year 5. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to today's English. Today we're going to have our Rainbow Grammar Focus lesson linking to our character description that we are going to be writing this week. So this week we are writing our character description all about our main character, who is Alice. And to do that, we are going to have a go at focusing on a particular Rainbow Grammar Focus. I wonder then, if you can tell me by looking at my slide here, at my two sentences, what type of clause do you think we're going to focus on today? What is our Rainbow Grammar Focus going to be? So you're rewinding your knowledge, because we've done this before. Okay, what type of clause can you see? Pause the video now and see if you can recognise what type of clauses we've got in our sentence. Fabulous. Right, wonderful. Hopefully then you have read our sentences. So I'll go first. Her golden hair, which cascaded down her back, was miraculously neat considering the fall. Okay, so I can see here I've got a bit more than just a simple sentence, okay, because I can see I've got my subject here, her golden hair, and I've also got my predicate, was miraculously neat considering the fall. But I've got another clause in the middle here, which is adding extra information. So if it's adding extra information, it must be a type of subordinate clause. But this subordinate clause doesn't start with a subordinating conjunction. It begins with the word which. Can you remember what type of word which is? Can you remember? Okay, hopefully you could remember that which is a relative pronoun, which tells me that this must be a relative clause because it's adding extra information to a sentence and it is beginning with a relative pronoun. Okay, so we've got her golden hair, which cascaded down her back, was miraculously neat considering the fall. Well done if you remembered and you recognised that this must be about relative pronouns. Let's have a look at the second one. So the second sentence says, the fall didn't scare Alice, who didn't seem to be scared by much. Okay, again here, this one's a little bit different just because our relative pronoun comes at the end. Okay, so the fall is the subject, didn't scare Alice is the predicate, and then our relative pronoun gives us more information about Alice. Okay, so we're saying Alice didn't seem to be scared by much. And it begins with a relative pronoun. Okay, so we can see here then that we've got a relative pronoun at the end of our sentence and it's giving us more information about this noun here. Okay, it's not giving us more information about the fall, it's giving us more information about Alice because that was the last noun previous to the relative clause. Okay, so like I said then, we are doing relative clauses today. Relative clauses come on our light purple card. I'm just going to find one in a moment so I can refer to it. Okay, so I've got here then my purple relative clause card. It's kind of like a almost lilac-y pink colour, but it's like very light purple. Okay, so this is what we use when we are back in class together for our relative pronoun. So like I said, it adds extra information about the noun and it begins with a relative pronoun. Okay, here are some examples that we are familiar with. So that, whom, whose, who, or which are all relative pronouns, and we have to select the appropriate one depending on what we are adding extra information about. Okay, this time then I want you to apply your new knowledge. So we've had a little rewind of relative clauses, and we've had a go at, we've looked at what a relative clause is. Now I've given you two new sentences here. I wonder if you can write these sentences in our rainbow grammar colours. So can you recognise the subject, the predicate, and the relative clause within our sentence for me? Have a go at that for me now. So remember, you could do this whichever way you please, whether you want to write a sentence and underline it in different colours, write it in different colours, or if you've got cards or similar at home, you can write them on there. Off you go, and then you can play when you're ready. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at that then. Let's have a look together. So let's have a look at this first one. I'm just going to draw boxes around mine using my colours here. Okay, so first then I'm selecting my green because I'm going to look for my subject. What is my sentence about? So her nose, which was small and perfectly formed, wrinkled as she sniffed the potion. Well, I can see this sentence is about Alice's nose, isn't it? So her nose is going to be my subject. What was her nose doing Well, her nose wrinkled as she sniffed the potion. So that then is going to be my orange, my predicate. What's going to be my verb in this sentence? Because obviously my predicate always needs to have a verb. Can you remember? Okay, my verb is going to be wrinkled. Let me get my colours back. Here we go. And then my relative pronoun, let's find a light purple. Here we go. My relative clause is going to begin with a relative pronoun. So which is my relative pronoun? So I can see that is going to be my relative clause, which was small and perfectly formed. If I took my relative clause out, would my sentence still make sense? Check for me. What if I took out my relative clause? Would it still make sense? Yeah, it would. Her nose wrinkled as she sniffed the potion. Okay, it still makes sense because it's still got a subject and a predicate. That relative clause is extra. It's adding that extra information. What am I forgetting? Well, I'm forgetting that my full stop needs to go on my red card. There we go. This one is a little bit different, okay, because this time our relative clause comes at the end of our sentence. Okay, so we've got Alice tried off the doors. She didn't try the doors. She tried off the doors. She tried the doors. Apologies there. Hopefully you saw my mistake and you corrected it. Alice tried the doors, which appeared to be locked. Okay, so I'm looking for which part of my sentence here wouldn't make sense on its own. So Alice tried the doors would make sense on its own because I've got a subject and a predicate, which tells me that part is my subject and my predicate and not my relative clause. So I'm going to put that my subject, which is Alice, because that's who my sentence is about. Tried the doors is my predicate. So my relative clause is going to be which appeared to be locked. And I can check that because which appeared to be locked doesn't make sense on its own. So it must be, and it begins with which is a relative pronoun. So it must be a relative clause. Okay, this time, because my relative clause comes at the end, it is adding extra information about the last noun that was in my sentence. So here, it's adding extra information about the doors. It's not adding extra information about Alice because Alice isn't the last noun that was in the sentence. So Alice tried the doors, which appeared to be locked. We're talking about the doors because that's the last thing that we referred to. Okay, well done then if you got those correct and you managed to remember the different rainbow grammar cards that you would need for those sentences. What we're going to have a go at doing now then is we're going to have a go at doing a few convince me's. So I have given you, well, I'll give you in a moment 3 sentences with a relative clause in them. I would like you to see if you can tell me what's wrong with my sentence. Okay, if you can tell me what's wrong, you can also then convince me, you can also then correct me by making them right. Okay, so your first one here then, the rabbit hole, who was extraordinarily deep, seemed to go on for miles. Can you pause the video now and see if you can work out, can you convince me that my sentence isn't right, and then can you correct it? Okay, fabulous. So the rabbit hole, who was extraordinarily deep, seemed to go on for miles. So I can see I'm quite happy with this because I've got subject, which is the rabbit hole. I've got seemed to go on for miles, which is my predicate, and I've got my embedded relative clause in the middle, which begins with a relative pronoun. However, if we use this relative pronoun who, we are usually talking about someone, so something that is alive. Is a rabbit hole a someone? Or is a rabbit hole a something? Okay, all right, a rabbit hole is going to be something, so it's going to be a thing. So we're not going to use who, we're going to use which. Let's check it makes sense now. The rabbit hole, which was extraordinarily deep, seems to go on for miles. Perfect, I'm happy with that now. Well done if you recognised my mistake. Let's have a go at another one. Pause the video in a moment. Can you convince me whether my sentence is correct or incorrect? And if it's incorrect, can you correct it? Wonderful. So let's have a look at this together then. So her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall. Here then, I can see I've got my subject, which is her blue smock. Let's add my rainbow grammar cards into it here. I can see I've got my subject. Have I got a predicate? Her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall. I've not got a predicate because I don't know what's happening to the blue smock. If it said her blue smock was immaculate despite the fall, that would work because was would be our verb. But we've not got a verb here telling me what is kind of, what's the blue smock doing, or what has it done? Okay, so I've got her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall. Which is a relative pronoun, which tells me that this is going to be a relative clause. But I'm missing a what? What am I missing from my sentence? Okay, I am missing a predicate. Okay, I need a predicate which includes a verb. Okay, so her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall. What do I want to say about her blue smock? Well, maybe I want to say was secured with a oversized ribbon. Okay, so you can see now then, we've got our subject, our relative clause, which was immaculate despite the fall, was secured with an oversized ribbon. Sorry, I don't know if I explained this poorly, because actually here, we have got a verb, we have got was here, so her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall, but because we've got that relative pronoun, it doesn't make sense. We still need another predicate to tell us what is happening to that blue smock. Okay, so now that it makes sense, her blue smock, which was immaculate despite the fall, was secured with an oversized ribbon. Subject, relative clause, predicate. Well done if you recognise that mistake and you were able to add a predicate to that sentence to make it complete. Last one then, and then we're going to have a go at writing some of our own. So her glistening blue eyes fixed onto the key, which were bright with wonder. What's wrong with this sentence now? Okay, can you convince me? And then can you make it correct by changing it? Okay, so we've got her glistening blue eyes fixed onto the key, which were bright with wonder. Now, a key, one, that's a singular thing, so I wouldn't say which were, because that suggests I'm talking about plural things, more than one thing. But also, the key probably it wasn't bright with wonder. This bright with wonder is meant to be describing her eyes, okay? But because it comes after the key, it makes it seem like it's describing the key, which isn't quite right. So how could we make this right? Okay, so we could move it to a different part of our sentence. So we could say, her glistening blue eyes. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So I've got two. So we could say her glistening blue eyes, which were filled with wonder, comma, fixed onto the key. Okay, now it would make sense because our relative clause comes after the noun that we are adding extra information to. Okay, or we could change our relative clause to make it about our key. So for example, we could say, whoop, apologies, Year 5, just got a little bit distracted there. Let's carry on then. So we were looking at this one and we're thinking about how we can make it correct. So here we moved the relative pronoun to come after the eyes, sorry, the relative clause to come after the eyes to make it clear that we were talking about the eyes. For this one then, the other way that you could have fixed this was you could have changed the relative clause to make it add extra information about the key. So for example, if I can get it on my screen, here we go. You could say her glistening blue eyes fixed onto the key, which, and then you could add some extra information about the key. So for example, was balanced on the glass table. Okay, so you can see how the relative clause needs to add extra information about the noun that it has just followed. So if it's following the eyes, okay, so here it comes straight after the eyes, it talks about the eyes, and if it comes after the key, then it's talking about the key. Okay, that's a common mistake that people make, so be careful, please. Wonderful. Let's do our turn then. So before you go off and write your own sentences, you're just going to have a go at writing your own relative clauses. Okay, so I've given you here the subject and the predicate, and I want you to see if you can add the relative clause. I've even given you the relative pronoun. Okay, so I've been super kind here, and I've even given you the relative pronoun. So for example, here we've got her eyes, which glistened with wonder. What extra information can you add about her eyes? Down here, we've got the odd girl who seems to be talking to herself. What extra information can you add about the odd girl who is going to be Alice? Okay, so it can be anything you like, but can you have a go at completing these relative clauses to make my sentences make sense, including a relative clause? Wonderful. Right, hopefully then you've had a go at that. I'll just go through an example then for each. So her eyes, which glistened with wonder. Okay, so we could say something now about her eyes. Okay, so we could say, for example, her eyes, which scanned the room. Okay, glistened with wonder, because maybe she's looking all around the room and her eyes are lighting up because she's so curious about everything that's around her. That's just one example. Obviously, yours will be different. The odd girl who seems to be talking to herself. So what extra information can we add about the odd girl? So maybe we could say something like, the odd girl who was unharmed. Oops, if we're going to spell unharmed correctly. Who was unharmed seems to be talking to herself, because that might be important extra information after Alice has fallen all the way down the rabbit hole. Okay, or it could be the odd girl who was dressed in blue and white head to toe. Well, actually, does that make sense? Would it be who was dressed head to toe in blue and white? Okay, I'm adding extra information about the girl. Well done if you had a go at that. Wonderful. Right, your turn now then, and you are going to be writing 3 sentences which include a relative clause about Alice. Okay, remembering that we're writing from the White Rabbit's perspective, so you are talking in third person about Alice. You are not Alice, okay, you are talking as if you are seeing her in the Hall of Doors. Okay, so you're going to write 3 sentences. In order to help you with this, you can use your character map. Let me just find my character map that you did yesterday, okay, because you've got lots of adjectives and descriptive language on there which might help you, okay, so please use that to help you when you're describing Alice, whether that be Alice herself or her dress or her hair or one of her features, okay. Please can you also make sure that one of your sentences uses a relative clause at the end of the sentence, which means that you're not putting it in the middle, you are adding extra information about the noun that came last. Okay, if you are looking for an extra challenge, you can also see if you can use figurative language, for example, a simile or a metaphor within your sentences. Okay, so 3 sentences about Alice, one of which needs to have the relative clause at the end, just like in this example here. So here we're adding extra information about the key. And an extra challenge is using your figurative language. If you've done all that, then you can label your sentences using the correct rainbow grammar colours, just to show as well that you know which bit is the subject, which bit is the predicate, and which bit is the relative clause. That's a really good way of checking that you've got all the parts of your sentence. That's going to be everything from me today. Please send us a picture of your sentences because I can't wait to read them, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.